Good morning, everybody. How are you this morning? We are really looking forward to our speaker today. Some of y'all that attend roll call may recognize this young man, Mr. Don Hirschenhofer, who is one of our very few submarine vets that we have within roll call. And I think I first met you when I went to speak at the Submarine Vets group. And that's where I met Dick Amos, who was the only World War II submarine guy that I had ever met. And he was such an incredible man. And I'm sure you'll share some stories about him today. But here today with my buddy and co-host, Rick. Rick has been a busy bee. Well, I guess you got some rest after the rodeo ended, didn't you?
Yeah, I've in 23 days I went to 25 rodeos. That's the most rodeos I've been to in my whole life. So
that's crazy.
It was fun. It was fun. It was interesting, but I'm glad that duty's over. So
yeah.
We're really excited to have Don on today because he's going to tell us about life on a submarine. We talked to some of our Navy veterans about life on aircraft carriers and different kinds of ships. And we don't have many people that have been on the submarine. So, Don, welcome today.
Well, thank you very much, Rick and Mary. And Mary, I totally agree with you. Dick was one of a kind. We miss him every meeting. He always shared his opinion, which was always there. And it was a pleasure to have known Dick, and we want to acknowledge roll call's effort in getting him out to Pearl Harbor. He told me when he got back, he got over, he put his hand on my shoulder, and I said, "Well, Dick, how was it?" He said, "That was the best week of my life."
Oh, that's precious.
Thank you, guys, very much. You made an old man really happy.
Yes.
That's solid gold to me.
Yeah, we've been blessed to work with a lot of great organizations between the Best Defense Foundation, American Airlines, Beyond the Call, and several others that put on these trips. And when they let us know that they have some seats, we're always happy to fill those seats because these guys deserve that opportunity. It's such a healing experience, I think, for them and for anybody that hasn't been. And I know everyone goes, "Oh, Hawaii, we all want to go there because it's a beautiful place, great weather and everything else." But if you're there and you don't go and see the memorial there at the Arizona, man, you're really missing out on one of the most somber experiences, but really important to understand how and why we got into World War II. And you think about Don Graves still talks about all those young men that when that ship went under, when the Arizona went under, how many of them they could still hear banging, trying to tell people we're here, get us out, and they couldn't get them out.
Yeah.
And that's just so sad, but an experience for sure for those guys when they got the opportunity to go back. So I am really glad that we got him there and that he felt like it was an incredible experience.
Well, he did. He certainly did.
And you think about men that old and women that old that have served and then get to go back to some place like Pearl Harbor. And, it makes it kind of just is one of those experiences for them that, just like you said, it was the best life. I mean, the best week of his life to do that. And then it's also a great experience for the people that get to meet them and get to honor them. So,
well, he certainly did enjoy it and appreciated it. Rick, you mentioned that you had other sailors on here before that have served on various surface ships.
Yes, sir.
Let me start by just saying there's really only two types of ships in the Navy or in the world, and that's submarines and targets.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
That's the way we look at it. We'll meet somebody, and we call them skimmers. We'll meet somebody who served on a tin can or an aircraft carrier, and we'll say, well, how'd you like serving on that target for 4 years?
Oh, my. I've never heard it put that way before.
Well, there you go, Mary.
Now, your father was in the Navy.
Yes.
And he got called up to go. Was he in World War II also?
He was a young man. He went in, I think he was 17 when he enlisted. He went in the Navy and they transitioned him into the Marine Corps. And he became, he got in the Seabees because he had trade skill. But he was in several campaigns throughout the Pacific. And that was really the deciding factor for me when it came time, which way you're going to go. It was easy in that respect.
He got called back up for Korea?
Yeah. I was just a baby. I don't remember it. I mean, I remember people telling me about it, but I was only a few years old. And he got called back up. He was in the reserves. He stayed in the reserves for several years, got called back up, was sent to San Diego to work on ships so they could get them out in the Pacific. They were recommissioning several warships. And that's what he did. And then we lived there in base housing. And so, but again, I was 3 or 4 years old. So
don't have many memories of San Diego then.
I've got a couple, but they're through photographs that Mom and Dad took. And just that sort of memories. I don't, and I remember things that people tell me happened. But firsthand, no, I was much too young. And
then from San Diego, you moved to Corpus?
No, we moved back to Mississippi. I was born in Mississippi. My mom and dad were from Mississippi. We moved to a little town called Laurel.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay, in Laurel, Mississippi. And that's where I started and went to grade school, and that's where I had my first job. I think I was 8 or 9 years old. My dad had a Sunday newspaper delivery rural route of the New Orleans paper, the Times-Picayune, and my job was his helper. And he'd wake me up at 3 in the morning on Sunday, and we'd take the back seat out of the car and we'd load it with newspapers. And I got to lay down writing on newspapers for about the first hour. And my job was to run the paper up and put it on the porch and then running it back in the car, and we'd go to the next stop. And
it's a lot of running.
Well, I was in pretty good shape when I was a young man, especially if you're out in the country and those farm dogs get after you. You learn to become pretty quick.
And you talk about taking the back seat out of the car. Those cars back then had a big back seat, so you put a lot of papers back there.
We did. I don't know how many papers we did, and then whatever was left, and there were always 6 or 7 newspapers left. Excuse me. I would sell in the neighborhood when we got home, and then I had to run home and get scrubbed up and go to church, and then I'd sit there and fall asleep during the sermon. So that was the first money I ever made.
Well, how did you end up in Texas?
Well, Dad got transferred, I guess, in 1958. So I would have been about 10 years old, and he got a new job in Corpus Christi.
Okay, that's when you moved to Corpus.
Yeah, and that was, to me, that was paradise. I mean, I enjoyed Mississippi. I was a young boy having a good time. But when we got to Corpus Christi, that was paradise. We'd go out to the beach every weekend and just camp. And he'd bring some of his buddies, and everybody would bring their sons. And we'd just sleep on the sand and eat hot dogs and for 3 meals a day. And then the men would wake us up in the middle of the night, and we'd go out to the second sandbar, which was over our heads, and pull this big trolling net back in. It was just full of sharks and stingrays and all kind of animals. I mean, it was something out of a book. It was just a great place to be, for sure.
And then you moved to the Metroplex after that?
Moved up to Arlington, finished high school at Arlington High, 1966. I enjoyed it. I missed Corpus. I missed the freedom we had in Corpus Christi and just all the different things that we could do. I kind of liked the beach. I did back then. And we moved up there, and I just, again, went to high school. Enjoyed it. Played a little football, had a good time, made some good friends. In fact, I'm in a writing group now with a high school teammate of mine.
Is that right?
From 1965 and 66. Yeah. So small world.
So after you graduated from high school, it was a couple of years before you went into the Navy.
Yeah, I kicked around a little bit. To tell you the truth, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. A little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little construction work, basically just wasting some time. And then decided I need to get on with life. And it was kind of a joint decision between me and the draft board. Made my options, well, it was easy to choose. I've always looked
at some kind of little problem here, so bear with us. Okay. There we are.
We're good.
I think so.
Yeah, I went in the Navy Valentine's Day, 1969. Went to San Diego, boot camp. It was not an awful experience. I mean, it was. I'll give you an example. Back then, I don't know if it's still this way. The Marine boot camp and the Navy boot camp were right next to each other, and there was just a little, I don't know what it was, a river or waterway between the two. And you'd be in your rack sleeping at 2 a.m, and you'd wake up, and you'd hear these damn Marines across the way over there marching and exercising, and say, "Damn, I can't get my sleep." So anyway, after 12 weeks, we're getting ready to unleash us on San Diego. I think we had like an 8-hour liberty, and we're all in this big auditorium, and there's an old chief up there who's briefing everybody, like, don't go out here and fall in love, and don't spend all your money, and be careful. And anyway, he's saying, some of you guys think you're pretty tough, and you're going to show everybody how tough you are. And you're going to see these young Marines, because they've just gotten out, and they're all, white sidewalls, hair, and brand new uniforms. You're going to spot them the way they spot you. And you're going to want to try a couple of them on and see who's the better man. So the chief went on. He said, I just want you to remember one thing. I'm not going to tell you not to do it, because some of you are going to do it anyway. But he said, I want you to think of one thing. It's always been like that with the Navy and Marine Corps. But for the past 12 weeks, you've been over here learning how to tie knots and chip paint. They've been over there for the past 12 weeks learning how to kill people. Now keep in mind, this is the spring of 1969, so Vietnam was full force. So they've been over there learning how to kill people. Now, if you still want to go pick a fight with one, you're on your own. And we did. We had some guys come back all beat up the next day. That's just the Navy and the Marine Corps, though.
And my uncle was in San Diego about the same time period, and he said that, he'd wake up, look out, and the Marines were out there running. Whenever it's time to go to bed, he'd look out, and the Marines were still out there running. So
that's their job. That's what they did.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so is that when, after you got out of basic, then you volunteered to go on the submarine?
Yeah. You go through all the testing and training and stuff during boot camp, and they're trying to fit you into a billet of what they think you might be good at. And evidently I wasn't good at anything. So they said, well, you want to volunteer for submarine service? And I always thought that was cool. I remember going back to the World War II movies with John Wayne and all that. And I said, yeah, man, I want to go into submarine service. That's cool. And so I volunteered, and the next thing I know, I'm on my way to New London, Connecticut, basic enlisted submarine school for, I guess, 2 or 3 months, I think it was, and did that. It was very interesting to me. got out and then went right to the fleet, went right to the Trumpetfish. I was assigned to Trumpetfish out of Charleston, South Carolina. And I got down in Charleston, and they were still 3 days out. The T-Fish was coming back from the Mediterranean deployment. So I got to work in the barracks for 3 days. No big deal. And then I went down to the pier that Friday morning when the Trumpetfish is coming in. And it was a very exciting time, a day for me. They had a big Navy band on the pier playing Anchors Away, and the pier was just full of families and friends that are welcome home. And I wasn't even part of it at that point. And I said, man, I made a good choice. This is exactly what I need to do. The band kept playing. Boat came in, tied up. Finally, all the people either got off or went on that were going, and it settled down. The band packed up and left. So I'm standing there with my orders, and I went across the brow, and I saluted the flag, and I saluted the watch. And it was a guy in the foulest, greasiest, most oil-laden set of dungarees you've ever seen. Had a .45 pistol on his hip. He looks at me, and I handed him my orders, and I said, I'm reporting for duty. And he says, "Who in the F are you?" And that was my welcome to the submarine service. And I went below decks, and things improved from that. But he was not in a good mood because he'd been gone from home for 6.5 months. And he didn't get to leave, so he had to stay on one more night. So he wasn't happy to begin with, and my timing wasn't too good. But that's the old Trumpetfish right there, passing under the old Charleston Bridge in the Thames River, heading out.
And the Trumpetfish is a World War II submarine. It was commissioned in 1946, so it just missed World War II. That's
correct. What you see there is a converted, it was a fleet boat. And you've all seen the old fleet boats, but they converted it. They cut it in half and added 17 feet in length, put a new sail. That's the big protrusion in the middle. That's called the sail. It's called North Atlantic sail. And you need that to keep somewhat dry when you're in the North Atlantic if you're on the surface. And then the 3 protrusions on deck were a passive sonar system that you could, it wasn't active. It didn't make any sound, and you could really, really get an accurate range on targets with that. And this was a diesel-powered submarine. Diesel electric. It is the same 4 Fairbanks Morse engines, generators, and then batteries. It was the same propulsion plant that had been in the boat when it was a fleet boat, and it was what it was originally built as a fleet boat. It was a Vallejo class originally, but it became a Guppy 3. So with the diesel engines and electric, mostly whenever you were submerged, you'd run off the batteries, correct? That's correct. And then you could come up to recharge your batteries, or you could run the diesel engines, I guess, while you were submerged, but you'd have to have some snorkels to have the intake and exhaust. Yes, at the aft end of the sail there, you can't really see it in this photograph. There's a intake and exhaust valve. There's 2 big tubes you could elevate like a periscope. So you come to periscope depth, raise the snorkel mast, and you could draw air in to run the diesel engine, and it will exhaust out through the other tubes below water. So once you're snorkeling, you're running the engines at periscope depth. Then you can either allocate a portion of that power for propulsion and or for battery charge. And we would usually split. So you charge your batteries and get a full charge on the battery, and you'd have, you're running fairly slow speed anyway if you're snorkeling for propulsion. Whenever you first came on the ship, you didn't just move right in and start doing what you eventually were going to do. No, you've got to work your way up, and you've got to earn the trust of every man on the boat who knows what you're doing and relies on you thoroughly. One false move, and you could kill 85 people. It's that simple. And you have that drilled into you every day and night. You come on board, you're the lowest of the low, and you get treated accordingly. And you earn your way up. You earn your respect of your shipmates and the officers, and nothing is given to you. You start off as a mess cook, which is, I guess, KP, Rick, for civilians. But you've got to help the cooks. You got to scrub the decks. You probably work 16 hours a day for 7 days a week. And then when you get off, you've got to start qualifying. And that means to qualify is to earn the dolphins, which we proudly wear, silver for enlisted, gold for officers. But to earn your dolphins, you have to know thoroughly every compartment and every system on that boat. And it doesn't matter what, you can be a cook, but if you're in the forward torpedo room and there's a casualty and there's flooding coming in tube number 6, you better know what valves you need to shut, or a fire breaks out in the after torpedo room. You need to know what circuits to isolate and what ventilation systems to close. So everybody on that boat knows that, and you learn that, and it takes 6 to 12 months, and it's actually called a qualification card. And you're put through exams where you do a walkthrough of the compartment, and you're walking through a compartment with a senior man, and he'll say, okay, what's this do right here? What happens if we lose AC? What happens if you see water here? What do you do? And you have to have all these answers. And when they have a confidence level that you know what you're doing, they'll sign off on that system and or compartment. And then when you complete that card, then you're taken on a walkthrough with the engineer, who's one of the senior officers on board, and he kind of puts you through the same thing. Different questions, and maybe not quite that level of detail, but he wants to make sure you know what you're doing. And then you have once you get all these signatures on the card and they make it official, you get a certificate. I've got mine hanging on the wall, and the captain will award you your dolphins. And back in the day, they used to put the dolphins on your chest, and then they would.
Oh, yeah.
Do a blood pinning.
Yeah. Same thing we did with rank.
Okay, pinning the dolphins, which you made sure you had an old skivvy shirt on, because it was going to be blood anyway. So that was just one of the traditions. But getting those dolphins and becoming qualified was a rite of passage that you had earned, and it meant, and it actually means more to me now than it did even then. As you get older, I think your perspective changes a little. Then I was young, and we all did it. I look back on it now, and I see it's kind of rare, but very, very special. It always will be special to me.
During that time that you were getting qualified, were you also learning your job that you're going to have as a quartermaster?
Yes. That's the other thing you get to do with all your spare time, is you get to go up and start learning about navigation and correcting charts and how to compute time and figure out where you are and how to determine how deep it is, and use that as navigation, all the different types of navigation. Even though we didn't have too many back then, that's improved a lot. I think I don't want to say it's any easier. It's always not easy, but always been hard. But you have to learn your job at the same time in order to advance and rate. And then you take tests on that. That's another whole line along with qualifications. But you take tests and you get rated, and then you have to apply your job to what you're doing in the boat to become a quartermaster of the watch. In other words, you're the only man in the conning tower when the boat is underway and operating, and you've got the total responsibility And then the new guys are coming to you saying, hey, I need to find out about these number 1 periscope and number 2 periscope, what Loran Alpha does, and how do you get a single ping sounding, and what does torpedo data computer does. And you start teaching them the aspects, because it's the next generation, or the next, next set of fellows coming up.
And your job was a quartermaster, and a quartermaster on the submarine is different than a quartermaster in the Army, where they handle supply and things like that. But you were a navigator, or
correct. It's we had we still did back then. We had a navigator who was usually a lieutenant commander. He was a senior officer on board. He was a navigator, and we worked for him. There were usually 3 quartermasters underway. That's called a section. And we had a senior QM who was probably a first class or a chief. And then we had 2 junior quartermasters that were, like 3rd class or 2nd class. I was 3rd class. And we had celestial navigation when we were on the surface, or we'd come up and do a sun line at noon. And from that, you can compute your latitude. So you knew at least where you were in that aspect of it. You'd have to get if you're on the surface and transiting, we do a star shot in the mornings and the evenings for celestial navigation. Of course, the navigator would go back in the conning tower, and it'd take him an hour to go through all the mathematics, the spherical trigonometry involved of actually plotting the celestial fix. Not my strong suit. I held the flashlight and kept track of the time. I probably should have paid a little closer attention in high school, because it fascinates me now. Then we had some electronic machines on board that aided in navigation up to a certain point. There were a lot of places in the ocean, the world back then, that and if the weather was bad, you had no celestial navigation, you had no electronic navigation. It was kind of just dead reckoning. So there was some of that involved as well. So it was not, back in the 1970s, early 70s, it was not an exact science that it is today. But we still did a pretty good job overall.
Just to do all the calculations then took a lot of mathematics and work and things like that. And now it's just, I'm sure it's all electronic and just a punch of a button.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think so. I'm not privy to a lot of the current information. I try to keep up with it. We have, in our submarine organization, we have younger guys coming in all the time, and it's always nice to talk to them and hear about all these changes that have been made in submarines. And you just scratch your head going, what? You don't have to do this? No, man, that went out with the sailing days. I mean, well, not quite, but it's very interesting. I always thought it was the best job on the boat, being a quartermaster, because one of the things you did was at battle stations, you were in the fire control tracking party. And that was a job in the conning tower, which was a very confined space, but that's where I spent my watches anyway. But if you're making a periscope approach right there, that's number 2 scope, usually the captain is on the periscope, and you're trying to sneak up on a guy, and he's giving you bearings and ranges. And my job was to try to plot the speed and course of the target. And it was constant feedback, and then you would set that into the torpedo, so you had an optimal firing solution. But it was a lot of people talking, bearing mark, range mark, down scope, and then you give some feedback, and then there's more input coming up. There's probably, in a very small space, we probably had 10 or 12 guys, elbow to elbow, in there, and the whole idea is to get him before he gets you. So it was intense.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
And whenever you were on the boat, you went on a North European cruise.
Yeah, we go to northern the North Sea and then up off Norway. And this is back in the day when we were dinking with the Russians. And our job was to try to monitor and track their submarine traffic coming out of from their northern fleet, and then report on that. And we try to kind of a traffic cop, if you will. And of course you didn't want them to know you were there, and they didn't. They were doing the same thing for you. we had a little deal. It's a little funny story. We had a short period of time where there was just a lot of submarine traffic, a lot of Soviet submarine traffic and American submarine traffic. And the Russians always had more boats than we had. They had a superior number far and away. And so we painted one hull number on one side, like 517, and then like 482 on the other side, where when they had aerial reconnaissance, they had airplanes flying over there, we would broach and show them the port side. So the Russians would write down like, 482. And then if we saw another plane, we'd broach and show him the starboard side. So they think we had two submarines in the area. It's us. And then when there's nobody around, we get up and we paint over the numbers. So they'd really be confused the next time we saw them. There was a lot of that went back and forth. It was some interesting times.
And then, because you were at Charleston, you spent a lot of time in the Caribbean.
We went to the Caribbean probably 3 or 4 times a year to shoot torpedoes. The water's clear. It's deep. You could back off the pier and probably run for 20 minutes, and you could submerge because you had unlimited depth.
How deep would you go?
Well, some of that's still classified. I mean, generally you shoot torpedoes at under 100 feet.
Okay.
Because that external water pressure exceeds 44 psi. So you don't want a whole lot have to overcome. Usually we'd be shooting torpedoes at periscope depth, which was about 60 feet, 62 feet. And they had a little torpedo retriever, a little boat down there that the guys had won the lottery and being assigned to it at St. Thomas. And they would run out and we'd shoot probably, I don't know, a dozen torpedoes at them all day. And of course they would retrieve them and we'd get them back in the night. But they was dummy. We didn't use war shots on them, but it was good practice. But we do that, and then we'd go stock up on rum, which was back then, I think it was about $75 a bottle. It was, 75 cents a bottle. It makes a lot more sense. So you get your 5 bottles, and we'd go back to the States. But we went to the Caribbean 3 or 4 times a year. Enjoyed it. It was always good duty. Yep.
And then sometimes you'd have a little R&R on the Iron Beach. Is that what you called it?
We call Steel Beach.
Steel Beach.
Although technically the deck, you can see the slots there. That's really teak wood. I mean, this is old school. But there was just getting some sunshine. Everybody, I think we've been down for a while. Nobody was in the water, and I was telling Rick earlier, I said that tells me that there must have been sharks out that day, because we usually didn't do a lot of swimming with the sharks in the water. And so
good plan.
It was a good plan.
Yeah.
What they used to do is you'd go up topside if we had an hour or so to kill, and we just kind of lay to there, rocking back and forth, and everybody'd go in the water. And you'd swim around, just felt good. And you'd swim around a little bit, and then they'd blow a whistle, and the whistle was a signal to get back on board that, we're going to get underway and need to go do something. Well, everybody was in the water, and you'd pretend like you couldn't hear the whistle. You'd turn your back to the bridge, and you say, I'm not getting out, man. This just feels good. So you're kind of floating around out there, and then all of a sudden you hear this boom, boom, boom. And they always had rifles. They had M1 rifles or machine gun up on the bridge. And and they were shark watches. So when you heard that rifle go off, you thought, he's shooting at a shark. And people almost broke their arms and legs getting back on board. And there was never a shark, but they got us back on board pretty quick too. So,
I'll bet.
Yeah. But that's just kind of typical of in the middle of the ocean somewhere, who knows where, a couple of 1,000 miles from land, anywhere, but just took a little time off. Enjoyed it.
It looked like fun. And you went on a cruise to South America while you were on the ship too, or on the boat. Yeah,
in 1971, we went on a Unitas 12, which was a 6.5-month deployment. It's a joint operation between the U.S. Navy and navies of all the different countries of South America. I mean, we operated with Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and you'd operate with these guys for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and you get to go into different ports. We probably made port call at least a dozen different ports all the way around South America. Absolutely fantastic trip. Great trip. Got to see just tons of everything, and enjoyed working with the other navies.
And you went through the Panama Canal.
Went through the Panama Canal heading down. Yeah.
Okay.
Went from east to west. Went through Panama Canal. Turned south. Went down across the equator. Had the obligatory ceremony where we became shellbacks. In fact, the lower right-hand photograph there, that's King Neptune and his court.
Uh-huh.
The man in the middle with the white hair, that's our captain. That was Milo Fuller, who he was a piece of work. And I can remember one time him telling a junior officer, he says, "This is my boat and I'll break it if I want to." You didn't get in his way. He was the captain and everybody knew it. And this particular day, though, he was King Neptune, and he relished the role. I'll just say that. But
Jack Stowe always talked lovingly about his time getting his shell back. So
it was special.
Yeah, we heard all the stories about King Neptune and all the antics that went along with it from Jack.
Well, they had, if you see to the lower right, the guy looks like the baby.
Mm-hmm.
He's dressed like a baby. He was a big fat engineman, had a big beer gut on him, and they lathered his belly up with grease.
Oh my.
And you had to go down there and kiss his navel and come up with a bunch of grease in your tongue.
Oh.
Hey, and that was the good part. And then and then it got worse from there. But
no.
Quite a ceremony. You all had to do it. I understand it's not quite like that today. I think they've taken a lot of the fun out of it.
Yeah. It's hazing, it's hazing. You can't
it is, and it ought to be. It ought to be.
Yeah.
The other picture is the Trumpetfish is taking on fuel, and I think out in Cartagena, Colombia. And then there's me on the job, taking a sounding, trying to figure out where the bottom is, and just a normal day.
And you said in this picture you're pretty dressed up. So
well, yeah, I was a little surprised. I've got on an actual regulation uniform. It was pretty lax at sea, underway, especially on the submarine. I'm not saying everybody, was real sloppy, but if you wanted to wear a t-shirt and shorts, you could if it was hot, because nobody's going to see you, and who cares? All right. So that was, I always thought that was one of the real advantages of a submarine. It's, there's a certain casual air about it. generally speaking, there's probably not a whole lot of layering between enlisted and officers. They're all shipmates. Now, you certainly respect the rank, and you don't go around, hey, old buddy, old pal, to the XO or the CO. But at the same time, they respected you for your job, and you were a professional sailor, and you were a qualified member of the crew. You had earned that right. And there was very little pettiness. It didn't exist. It wouldn't go on. In fact, this past summer, I called my old navigator, Lieutenant Commander Glover. Hadn't seen him since 1974, I think 74. And I found his number, and I didn't even know he was still alive. And I called him and I asked him, I said, do you remember me? He said, absolutely. And we talked for an hour and a half, reliving old times. And I asked him, I said, was there a real difference between a submarine crew? Because he went on and he went to Annapolis and made a career in the Navy and was a captain and was actually the commanding officer in an ammunition ship. So I said, was there a difference in the crews between a submarine and a surface ship? And he said, day and night. Yeah. He said, you guys were a little more intelligent, but a lot more involved. You cared about it. He said, it's just the nature of being in a submarine. You have everybody's life in your hands, 7/24. It's important. And at the same time, you have a good time. You enjoy doing it. You get to that point where you develop a certain comfort level. You never, ever slack off, but you also have a lot of confidence in your ability to deliver. So I enjoyed the conversation with him. It kind of reinforced some of the things I had felt and thought over the years. So it was kind of nice, a little reunion.
And on that South American cruise, you came through the Straits of Magellan and then came back up the east coast of South America.
That's correct. And then, of course, we crossed the equator again off Brazil. And we had a handful of new guys that we just beat the hell out of coming back up, because it was their bad luck. They got assigned to the boat, and they picked up the boat somewhere between the two equators. So they all lived. It was okay.
So you were already a shellback, so you could.
No, I got to dish it out this time.
Pull some rank on them.
A little bit.
And so after your boat was decommissioned, I think it went to Brazil for their Navy to use. So
yeah, it was sold to the Brazilian Navy. I'm sure it's been stricken at this point. Probably a bunch of razor blades or steel or something. I don't think it's no longer with us, but yeah, the Brazilian Navy picked it up. They bought it.
And so you stayed on the boat about 3.5 years.
Right.
And then you got out of the Navy. What'd you do after you got out?
Well, I got out of the Navy. I went to picked up a construction job in Florida. I didn't have anything else to do. Ran into some guys down there. Ended up actually going to Colorado, went gold mining for about 3 months on our own, lost every penny we had. Had a lot of bad experiences with everybody. Anyway, then I finally decided, well, maybe I need to get an education. And I had a year of college credit already. So I had gone through a little town called Flagstaff, Arizona at one point, my journeys, and they had a school, and I decided, well, I'm going to write them a letter. And I wrote them a letter, and I said, hey, I'm out of the Navy, blah, blah, blah. I always wanted to go to Northern Arizona University. And they said, well, come on out. And they gave me a very liberal allowance for being in the service. I got to, get credit for several math courses and some other stuff. And went to school, got a bachelor's degree at NAU, went on the GI Bill. Had a good time. It was fun to be in school.
Then you came back. Did you come back to Texas?
No, when I graduated from Northern Arizona, I think I went to Mississippi first and got a job that I really didn't like, and then I kind of got into a different profession in land acquisition and management, and got into some transmission line, power lines, pipelines, and then telecommunications with MCI.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that you got some traveling out of that.
I have worked in every state of the United States with the exception of Hawaii and Alaska.
Wow.
I've been in Hawaii and Alaska, but I've never worked there. But I've worked in either between pipeline work, telecommunications work, and or power line work. Yeah.
Would you do the right of way for that, or?
Yeah, my job was to go out and secure rights of way and land for whatever it was we needed to build or wanted to build.
And you'd make the deal with the property owners?
You deal with the property owner, you deal with all the levels of government, secure all the permitting, the license agreements needed, easements and or leases with landowners. I enjoyed it. Every day was different. You've never been told more or no more times than you hear when you're doing that kind of work. At the same time, every day is a challenge, and you say, "Well, you told me no yesterday, but that was then." So,
get to see a lot of pretty places that you just don't normally see.
Yeah,
just on a regular trip.
Yeah, I was very, very blessed. I got to see really a whole lot of the United States and get paid to do it. It was kind of like being in the Navy. I got to see a whole lot of the world and got paid to do it, and meet all kind of interesting people all over the world. And now I got to do it here in the United States, and really just blessed. The way I look at it, always had a good time.
And you became involved in the United States Submarine Veterans, Inc., and that's an organization for people that have been on the submarines, correct?
You have to have to join. You have to have an honorable discharge, and you have to have a set of dolphins. So you have to be qualified in submarines. Again, silver for enlisted and gold for officers, and you have to have an honorable discharge. It's an organization. It's a nationwide organization. We have about 12,000 members nationwide, 150 bases. And Mary, you spoke at the Cowtown base, which is our local affiliate. There are 8 bases in Texas. I was the base commander then. I'm now the district commander. There are 8 bases in Texas. I have the whole of Texas. So it's a very worthwhile organization. The primary purpose is to perpetuate the memory of our shipmates lost. And we do that. And here's one of my favorite people, Dick Amos. And I'm awarding him a longevity certificate from the USS VI. And just a heck of a guy. I remember when Dick joined the organization, and he was so alive and alert, and he always had a twinkle in his eye. And Mary, I mentioned this to Rick earlier. One of the things you like to do as submarine is you like to compare notes to the submarine sailors. Okay, what was the worst storm you were in? What was the best chow you guys ever had? What was the best port, Liberty port, you ever got to go? So I asked Dick. I said, Dick, what was the best Liberty port that you recall in your days in the Navy? And he kind of cocked his head back, and he got a twinkle in his eye, and he didn't hesitate one bit. He said, Don, Havana, Cuba, 1956. and my understanding was Havana, Cuba in 1956 was Katie barred the door. It was a wide open kind of place. And I can see Dick enjoying himself.
Yeah, back then, Havana had a lot of casinos, and it was a place that a lot of people went to have a good time.
Yeah, it was before Castro took over, and it was frequent stop. If you were going to the Caribbean on a submarine or in the Navy, Havana was one port of call.
Now, I guess now the port of call is Guantanamo Bay. So,
well, I don't not unless you're a prisoner. No, we never put into Guantanamo Bay. The Marines run Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
When we go to the Caribbean, we always would start off in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And then we go around the corner of the island. There's a little Navy base down there. It's really a listening post and Navy base called Roosevelt Roads. And it's really an anchorage. And it's not much to it. It's one pier, but you can load out torpedoes there and catch up. And they have a pretty sophisticated communications center there. We were down there one night. I'll never forget it. We were up at the EM Club and spent way too much time up there because we had to get underway the next morning. And we went back down to the pier, and we had run into a couple of guys we'd struck up a friendship with. They weren't on our boat, but they were UDT guys. This is back before they had Navy SEALs. Okay, everybody was UDT, Underwater Demolition Team. And we had run into these guys, and they'd never been on a submarine like the Trumpetfish. And we said, well, we'll take you out. And they got to be quiet because everybody's asleep. It's about 2 a.m. And we'd been drinking a few beers. So we took them through the boat and showed them. Of course, we woke everybody up and got people to throw shoes at us and stuff. And, we got back up topside finally. And so they're sitting there, and they're impressed. They said, God, this is really fantastic. And they asked us, we're sitting on the end of the pier, pitch dark, and there's an old farm light, at the very end of the pier shining into the water. And they said, say, guys, we're going to go for a swim. You want to go for a little swim? And we said, well, where are you going? He's right here. Just swim around, And they said, no, we're going to swim over to Villegas. Well, Villegas was a shelling and bombing range. It was a little island about 8 miles to the east out in the Caribbean. And they said, no, we're going to swim over to Villegas. We'll probably get there about sunrise, crawl up on the beach, catch a couple of hours of Z's, and swim back. And we said, well, we'd really love to, but we're going to get underway at 4 a.m, so we can't go with you.
Good thing for that.
Yeah, no way. So
you missed the chance of a long swim.
I didn't miss anything, Rick. But we saw those guys the next night in the EM Club, and they were just fit as a fiddle. And they said, "Oh, it was a great swim." And pitch dark, mid-ocean. 8 miles. And I said, ay. I'll just stay on my little submarine and you guys just do what you do. Okay.
For real.
Yeah. There's work for all of us here.
Hey, this is your commanding officer here.
That's correct. She's the one without the hat. We're at Bryce Canyon. We're retired. We really enjoy traveling. All over the country. We've been to Italy, Sicily. Of course, she wants to go again. And that's the problem with traveling is it's the gift that keeps on giving. But we've been married over 40 years, and that's the reason I'm still here.
Wow.
And you obey orders good because you're still here.
Well, life does not have to be that difficult, Rick. Yeah. We make it a lot harder than it needs to be, I think, sometimes.
We do indeed.
Isn't that the truth?
Amen.
Well, we had Bill Henry. I don't know if you know Bill. He said that the submarine's he's way too claustrophobic to get close to one of those. So there's probably a few of us like that.
I'm with Bill. Hey, Don, you have something big coming up, don't you, in April?
Yes, as a matter of fact. Thank you, Mary. We've got, we do, the District of Texas, we do a thing called the Lone Star Roundup. Now, there's a national convention that we hold annually, but this is something we do just for the bases in Texas. Of course, we invite any submarine sailor to be there, We're going to have a get together the weekend of April 11th and 12th. The 11th, we're going to have a barbecue at Arlington Veterans Park. Jim Ross, Mayor of Arlington, will be welcoming us there. And then Saturday, we're going to do the tolling of the boats ceremony, which it's a very solemn, very serious ceremony. Every boat's name is read, the circumstances of its loss, and how many men went with it. Mm-hmm. And then a bell is rung. And you go to the next one and the next one. And we'll have a tolling of the boat ceremony at the Medal of Honor Museum. We've already, Rick Mitchell, who's he's the next level above me. Rick has been working very hard, excuse me, to set that up. Rick and Mary, it's going to be in the auditorium. It's going to be the morning of April the 12th. I highly recommend it. It's a very moving ceremony, but it also tells you a whole lot about the submarine service and something we're very proud of. So we're doing that. And then let's see, that's that weekend. Then next year in 2026, we're having the National Convention in Corpus Christi. So we like to get together. We call them sea stories when we start telling tales about our various adventures. Rick, I think you would.
Some are true and some are.
Some may be true, but that's the way it should be.
You have to give it to the Navy. You guys really hold tight to traditions.
Well, absolutely.
Those, every ceremony I've gone to on base that is put on by the Navy, it's everything is just the way that it has always been. Those traditions, when they ring the bell, when they do certain things, it's so impressive and it's so moving.
It really is, Mary, and it's one of those things that again, back in 1969 when I was a young sailor, I don't know that I appreciated the depth of the scope of what I was involved with. But as I've gotten older, it's become much, much more important to me. And it really, really makes you warm inside to know that you're a part of that and that continues. And I'm like a lot of people, maybe not. I'm very encouraged about the future. We meet some of these young sailors. We had Navy Week in Fort Worth, and they had a bunch of crewmen from the USS Texas submarine. Yeah. And I'm very impressed with these young guys today. Are smarter than we were. They can do more than we did, and I think they're in pretty good hands. I'm sleeping pretty good with them out under the ocean at night. They're taking care of business. But
there's a lot of those young sailors like that in servicemen and women that they're standing watch 24 hours a day for us. So
absolutely,
we just don't think, we see the ships and the airplanes and things, but we don't always think about all the people that are submerged that are also taking watch.
Mm-hmm. There's somebody right now down there scrubbing out the bilges or changing out some part on a piece of machinery, and he's covered in grease and oil, and it's 130 degrees. And he's cussing to everybody that'll listen to him. But you know what? He's getting his job done.
Amen.
That's right.
I guarantee you that. That makes me feel good.
Yep.
A lot of great people out there.
That's the truth.
Well, Don, we appreciate you being with us today and teaching us a lot about submarines and about life on the submarine.
Well, it was my pleasure, Rick. I didn't know what to expect. You guys make it very easy. You may have guessed I kind of like to talk anyway, but
well, that's what made it easy.
Well, it was easy for me, and I appreciate it.
Hey,
appreciate it.
Don, if anybody out there listening, whether they're listening live now or they listen later, wants to come to that ceremony on the 12th, what do they need to know about being able to attend that?
Mary, why don't you have them call me or get in touch with me? And if somebody lets you know, you can feel free to give them my phone number. I think you have it. I'll send it to you.
I do.
Please have them give me a call. And I think it's free of charge. I think it's in the auditorium. But we'd like to see a lot of people there. And obviously you two are invited. I think
We'll try to be there.
Heck, I got my invite on the 29th of January from you.
By the way, I have reserved my spot for roll call already this month. So
That's good.
That's good because we were already at over 340 RSVPs last night.
Wow.
I haven't looked to see where we are today, but we may be sold out already. So good.
Well, you guys do a great job of that, and I appreciate. I've gotten to where I'd missed several because I just really got so involved with the sub-vets and doing so much, and it has a lot of demands on your time. So, but I enjoy doing it. I'm retired, and what else you going to do? Might as well do something you enjoy.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Do some good for somebody else.
Try to
make a difference.
And you made your reservation already, haven't you?
That's what he said. He did.
Okay.
So
roll call.
We're at 396 as of this minute.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. And
we'll have at least
24 hours.
2 submarine guys there. The Red Hog, aka Lawrence Ryan, and myself.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't, that's one of our small groups is the submarine vets. So we always like to.
There aren't many of us, Mary. Yeah. I mean, in the whole state of Texas, we only have about 350 sub-vet sailors in the organization. Now, there's several out there that haven't joined the organization. I think primarily because they're not aware of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, and you're always welcome to come to a monthly meeting as well. We meet third Saturday of every month at American Legion Post 516 in East Fort Worth, and we start around 11 o'clock, and we start telling stories. We've changed the format a little, Mary, since you were there. We started 11 a.m. Telling stories, sea stories, swap of lies, a couple, and then we have our meeting, and then take care of business. So, and
you can get a meal there.
You can right there at the post.
It's nice because you don't have to worry about when am I going to find time to have lunch.
No, it's all right there. They've got a grill and bar.
Yep.
And then they've got a real nice back room where we meet. Very, very accommodating. David Finn and company. Dave Etter is one of our members as well. He's big in the Legion, but come out and see us, Rick. You might get some more material. You never know.
We'll do that. We'll certainly do that.
You're certainly welcome.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Don, and we will see you at roll call.
Hey, my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Enjoyed it myself, so I can just what do I need to do?
I'll just do it for you.
Thank you.
We'll see you later, Don. Thank you. Wow. We learn something new.
I'm telling you.
Every time we have somebody on, don't we?
And every time I look at him and I think he is so tall. He's not a little, like Dick Amos makes sense. He was a little guy, but Don is not a little guy. And to get him in that submarine, that had to be tight quarters for him.
Yeah, and that submarine was pretty old. I mean, it wasn't.
Wow.
Well, you made it back from Florida. You were there for a while?
Sorry, yes, and I brought a cough back with me.
And you got what you needed to do done.
Yeah, we had the memorial for Barbara while we were there. Got the house pretty well cleaned out that my sister inherited, and got found more things that my dad saved that I had no idea that he still had. So um, he's been gone 4 years, and I thought I found everything when we were there with Barbara at the house when he passed, and then cleaning things out, I was absolutely shocked at some of the things I found of his. But it was tough, but it was good. And my sister and I got to spend lots of time together.
It kind of brings some closure to it too, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
One of our dear friends who has been very instrumental in roll call and the growth roll call, it's Brenda Linhart. She just lost her mom just a couple of days ago, and I'd known Blanche since I was about 14 years old, and used to go down to the church. She was the church secretary, and I'd go down there and help her do stuff. But she's a great woman, and got some good kids. And we just want to. Our prayers are with Brenda and John and Keith and Pat and their families as they mourn the loss of their mother, because she was a dear friend to so many people. She was a dear friend to my mother too. So we love you, Brenda, and we're thinking about you and your family. So.
Yeah, Brenda is awesome. I know I was communicating with her last night and said, hey, Brother Bob, have anything to say lately about when the renovations will be done? And she said he thinks we will seriously be back in the church in August for the luncheon.
Whole year.
Yeah, so that would be really nice to see us get back.
Yeah, because we're off in July, so that'd be kind of a good time to transition back to Birchman.
Yeah, yeah, and it's where we've been for so many years, and Willow Park has been really great to us, and it's a phenomenal facility. But boy, it's just so much easier on Brenda when she does the food to not have to deal with the two different churches too. So there's pros and cons to everything, but we have been there for a very long time, so that is home.
Very long time. And for those that aren't familiar with the roll call, you can visit the website at roll-call.org. There's also a way that you can make reservations for the next luncheon, which is going to be on the 28th of February.
Yep, so, and it's going to fill up probably today. So if you're at the latest, I would say about noon tomorrow, but my guess is it may fill up by the end of the day today. So if you're interested in attending a luncheon, get in there and get your RSVP in. And remember, our veterans always are free, and we do ask that the non-veterans contribute the $15 cost of the meal. If you're interested in helping out or sponsoring, whether it be you want to, support buying a lunch for a veteran, you can go to our website and you can pay for one veteran's lunch. Maybe you're just out there listening and you're not interested in or able to come to a lunch, but you'd like to feed one of the veterans. You can go out there and you can do that right there online as well. And we're very blessed to have the sponsors we have. We're working with Lockheed Martin again this year. We'll be taking veterans to ball games again this year. So we'll have 5 of our veterans at 5 different ball games that will be honored. And that's all due to that sponsorship with Lockheed. So we're blessed to have sponsors like Lockheed and American that do things for us and just have a heart for our veterans.
There's a lot of great sponsors. There's a lot of great supporters out there. The Daughters of the American Revolution, they're there, I guess, every month to serve our veterans, and those women are really special to us. We have a lot of different organizations that help us, so it's great to have the support.
Can't do it without them, Rick. We just can't do it without them.
That's right. And we are going to have some winter weather in just a few hours. So
we are. Not looking forward to that. Thought about staying in
not either.
For a week.
Yeah, just make sure your pipes are wrapped outside and leave a drip on so your pipes don't break. And I've been watching the weather, and it looks like it's going to get below freezing about 5 o'clock. So
Yeah.
it was going to be later, but they just keep moving it up. So
Yeah, they do. But don't worry, Monday it'll be 74 degrees. So
I'll look forward to that.
yeah, we it's that time of year we do the roller coaster thing, but we're almost out of winter now for us here in Texas. This may be our last shot of winter.
I hope so. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, we say that until we get to about August, and then we're wishing that the heat would go away.
Just to have a little blast of some real cold air. Well, thank you, Mary, for co-hosting today, and I enjoyed having Don on, learning more about another one of our roll call members. So,
yes.
And we look forward to seeing everybody next week on Hometown Heroes.